Hello everyone. Today I want to do a very quick video about the basics of Elektron machines because I'm a happy Elektron user, but Elektron does have the reputation that their instruments are very capable but very difficult to use. And when I first bought the Mark 1 analog rhythm, um, I had an issue with it. I found it very difficult to use. And because of that, I got sort of disinterested in it and ended up selling it last year, only to get back into Elektron stuff this year with the Digitakt, and later the Digitone, and even later the Analog 4. So what happened? Well, I think Elektron over the years has really improved the layout of their machines. I found the Analog Rhythm Mark 1 very complicated, and the newer designs definitely help in that regard. And also, you just have to invest a little bit of time into learning these machines, and then they become very rewarding. But what I wanted to do today is show the most basic of function, to show that actually it is quite easy to get a sound out of an Elektron machine, and it's quite easy to make a little sequence, and you can do that without touching all the really advanced stuff and still get up and running and make some music with it. So a little bit about sounds then, how to create sounds. So the Digitakt and the Digitone are very similar in this regard, even though this is a sampling drum machine, as they call it, and this is an FM synthesizer, a digital synthesizer. Basically, tracks and sounds. This one has 8 tracks. Each can have their own parameters, a sample, and all the settings that go with it. This has 8 synth voices, but 4 tracks, which you select here. There are some differences between these machines, but basically what it's all about when editing or creating sounds is these rotary knobs and these buttons under here. And so if we just ignore the first one, that's called trig on both, then the Digitakt has 4 parameter pages and the Digitone has 5. Digitone is a little bit more complicated, where you press this once, you get a page, and you press it another time and you get a different page. For all of these, synth 1, synth 2 control the operators, the sound generating units, the filter, typical in a subtractive synth, a filter with an envelope and a little extra filter on the second page, the amp page with the main envelope for the sound, and drive control. There are all these controls, and basically the LFO, the idea here is that there are 8 of these rotary encoders, endless encoders, and they correspond to what you see on the page. Same for the Digitakt. For instance, if we go to the source page, which is about the sample, which sample you select and what you do with it, there are 8 little icons here, and there are 8 controllers. So the top left one controls the tuning, and the bottom right one controls the volume. And so actually this is quite easy once you get your head around it. There's a second page here with the same parameters, but it shows you the sample waveform. There's no sample selected. I'll do that right now, and let's just get started with something. So I'm turning the top right knob here, and it scrolls through all these different samples that are preloaded, and I press yes and it's loaded. I'll go back to the other page. You can see the waveform here. On the other page you get the controls in bigger, and I'm actually on track 2 here. There are 8 tracks. You select with these knobs, and when you press them you also get the sound. You can change the tuning, very nice and chunky kick drum. You can play forwards, you can loop forward and reverse. All sorts of neat stuff you can do with this. There's pitch reduction, start and length parameters for the samples. You get the idea. Next is the filter page. The low pass or a high pass filter, you can select it here. Cutoff and resonance, or you can set it to off the filter and it does nothing. There's an envelope here. Then the amp, it has an envelope. It's not an ADSR, but it's an attack, hold, decay envelope. There's an overdrive. Very nice sounding overdrive. For instance, if I want to make the kick sound shorter, I decrease the hold and the decay, and now I can go all the way to like a really short click. Then there's sense for delay and reverb, there's panning, and there's an LFO you can assign to any parameter, and it can modulate a lot of stuff. I'm not going to go into details, but this is really on the Digitact all what it's about when it comes to shaping sounds. You select a sample, you get all these parameters, and on the Digitone you don't have samples. You start with sort of a blank patch. This functions as a little keyboard, whereas here you select the track with these buttons. Here you do it with these. So the first track, and there's all this stuff you can change to change the character of the sound, and I'm not going to go into what it exactly everything does, because here it gets quite complicated. This is FM synthesis, but basically you can see these buttons selected different parameter sets, and then these dials control what's on the screen. It's that simple. Okay, now for sequencing, that's the only other thing I'm going to touch on, and then I'm actually going to call it today, just to sort of explain or show you that manipulating a sound and creating a little sequence is easy, and all the advanced stuff that Elektron machines can do is really cool. But if you just want to get started and make something, it's actually not difficult. Right, so we selected this sound and changed it a little bit, the kick drum. Okay, now let's make a loop. So there are several ways of recording steps, tricks as they call them in Elektron. I'm just going to show you the grid recording mode, which is you press record once, and now these 16 buttons are 16 steps, and that goes the same for the Digitone as well. You press this and they're just different steps. If you press it again, it goes back to the normal mode where you play. And for the kick drum here, 1, 5, 9, and 13 gives us 4 to the floor. It's that easy. You can add an extra step. Pressing it again removes it. And there's a lot more you can do, but this is the basics of it. Press this again and we go back to the mode where you select the different tracks and play them. You can actually also select a track here without playing the sound by holding the track and pressing it. Now we're on here, and we can edit it without hearing it, which is nice for live playing, but that's basically all there is to it. Now I started on the second track, let's go to the first and just very quickly just find the sound. I'm on the source page, so if I scroll through these, these are all the samples I've loaded in. Little hi-hat, I press yes. Maybe lower the volume a little bit. Maybe add some reverb. I go to the amp page, reverb, the second on the bottom here. Okay, and let's make a pattern here. Very sort of standard house or techno beats. Couldn't be simpler. Maybe the reverb is a little bit too much. I'll dial it back a little bit. And that's all really. And then one final thing I want to show you, which is slightly more advanced, but is really an important part of the Elektron workflow, is the so-called parameter locks. So let's say I want a second little hit after every one here that is lower in volume. So I put this in, it has the same volume. What if I want to change this in the sequence? I just press and hold this and I lower the volume here on the amp page. Now you can clearly hear it's lower in volume. So what if I do that again here and here and here? Maybe I want to make the difference even bigger, so press and hold them again. And those are called parameter locks. If I press and hold this one, nothing on the screen changes. If I press and hold this one, where I adjust the volume, you see there's this yellow square around it, or it inverts the colors. does the same here, here, and here. If I press quickly, the step is gone. I also lose the so-called parameter locks, but I can just easily put them there again. And that's one of the more advanced things about Electrons. They all do this. They all have this basic sequencer functionality. But yeah, basically what I just showed you, selecting a sample, editing the sound, and making a simple sequence, it isn't that hard. And all the more advanced stuff, it's there if you want it, and it's definitely worth exploring, because that's where like you really unlock the power of Elektron machines, whether it's the Digitech, the Digitone, or something like the Analog 4 or the Octatrack. But yeah, these are just the basics, and as you can see, it's actually quite simple. And the other really nice thing about the Elektron workflow, the last thing I'm going to say about it, is there is this sort of consistency in how it works. Once you sort of quote unquote get it, you can sort of really navigate around it really easily. You don't have to remember a ton of stuff, because everything sort of, the way things work, it keeps coming back, it keeps recurring. There's this sort of internal logic to the way it works, not within each machine, but also across different machines. And there are differences. The Analog 4 outside the screen here, which I have, is in several ways quite slightly different, and has more options, more features, a little bit more complicated. But yeah, these basic operations, manipulating a sound and programming a basic sequence, those are all the same across all Elektron machines. And again, they're not that hard. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you found it useful, please like it and subscribe. Also check out the video description, where you can follow a link to download my free sample pack, Too Many DFAM Kicks, which, as the name suggests, consists of kick drums that I recorded from the Moog DFAM. Definitely check that out. And again, thanks for watching. I will see you on the next one. Bye bye.